as far as the Silk Stocking Sisters is concerned, a lot of people know about the Southern aspect of desegregating schools. And you kind of give us a viewpoint from your own experience.
Correct.
Could you go a little into the background of the reasoning for even writing the book?
Yes, I felt that this was a story that really wasn't told specifically from perspective of the North, quote unquote, because all the talk has been about Southern segregated schools in the South. And very little has been written about desegregation and segregation in Northern schools, and specifically a major city like New York City, okay? So I know there are other cities in the North that may have had some pockets of that, but to think about the experiences in New York City schools was something that I felt needed to be shared, specifically because I was a member of, I graduated from New York City schools. I grew up in New York City and I attended public schools in New York City, all public schools from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. And I felt that because of my specific experiences, having been part of a quote unquote experiment when I was in the 4th grade, I felt compelled to actually write about this experience and also the experiences of 6 other of my classmates or other individual girls who went through the experience. And let me preface this by saying the reason why I called it the Silk Stocking Sisters is because we all attended the same specific school, which was located in the New York City district called the Silk Stocking District of New York City. And I named the sisters because we're all sisters in that perspective. So that's how the title pretty much came out, about the story of the Silk Stocking Sisters, because it's our story, 7 of us. And I'm one of the 7 girls who's described in the book about the experiences of what we went through attending a school that we didn't really understand, specifically that it was not necessarily desegregated, but basically from my research, I found that the specific school that we attended was not part of an official desegregation process. It was in essence a way in which that particular school was losing enrollment and they needed to fill the seats in that school. Okay, there's a difference. And as a result, yes, the other way of providing more openness for students of color, specifically Black and Latino students, to come into that school also served the purpose for that school to have bodies at their school, where they were losing students because that district, some of the parents were moving out of the district, and so they didn't have as many students to fill the seats. Whereas the schools where I attended in Harlem and in East Harlem, those school districts were a number of students. There were so many, kids, they didn't have a place for kids to sit in classrooms. So this particular experiment took place, but this particular school selected their students, okay? They selected us. It wasn't like we just, okay, we're gonna all go to the school. No, we were selected. That's why I want to talk about the story in the book, because it was a very, I researched, and I said, well, why is it the school that I attended on this list where the city says we can have feeder schools and cinder schools? And the school I came from was a cinder school, but not to that particular school that I attended in the 4th grade. So I had to do the research to see why wasn't that happening. So that's when I realized, after doing my research, that the school I attended was not the school that was listed to actually desegregate the schools. So it was basically, like I said, an experiment, coming to find out that they needed to have students, they wanted to have more diversity, okay? Possibly, I'm not sure that was the case based upon our experiences there, but in a sense, it was a way to see of making sure they were going to select the best students, which meant, I know when I was in the 3rd grade, I was reading at the 8th grade school level, 8th grade reading level. I was in 3rd grade reading 8th grade. I knew my grades for reading, and I think my math was maybe 6th or 7th grade, but definitely my reading level was about 8th grade reading level when I was in the 3rd grade. So the students who attended the school across the board, all these girls, even the guys who attended, okay, were top of the class where they came from, top of the class, right? Oh. This was consistent throughout my research. Now, I have been in touch with these women, and also a couple of the guys, I actually was able to connect with one of my former fourth grade classmates, the only Black guy in the class. And we didn't talk specifically about, but we're going to be talking about other things moving forward. So that leads into your whole topic about perseverance. I wasn't giving up on this. I want to make sure that everybody's story is told. So I'm going to pursue other things beyond the book related to the topic of how do you persevere? How do we get through that experience? Because it wasn't just an educational experience. It was a psychological experience, okay? So the pressures, you know, and I say often in the book that the experiences some of the Black children went through in the South, those of us in the North went through just as bad experience. It was traumatic, okay? There were discriminatory practices that were taking place. We were ostracized. We weren't included in some cases. And I thank the few friends that I still have now, and I was able to reconnect with them, who invited us to the parties, okay? And it was amazing. But that shows you, it goes back to the kind of thinking a person, or I guess in that case, parents have, because I don't believe the Black parents who sent their children to these schools, they wanted the best for their children. They wanted the best education for their child. Did they know we were going to be confronted with this type of discriminatory practice? No. And you know what? Many of us didn't even tell our parents, because I think had we told them, they would have pulled us out of the school. But we persevered. I was able to connect with a childhood friend from that day, fourth grade. She and I became the best of friends. We talked almost every night after school, and we're still friends to this day, okay? But if it weren't for her, I would not have survived that experience, all right? So you have to have some support mechanism in place to connect you, to keep you there, to keep you persevering. Because I know part of our discussion is to how do you persevere? So basically, having connections with others, all right, that helps. Having people who support you, parents, guardians, or caregivers to support you through whatever process. In our case, the book was about the educational process. So they tried to make everything comfortable for us, which meant, you know, we had to commute like on a public bus. We didn't take school buses, no yellow school buses. Big difference. These were New York City public school buses that other students who might have been a little further out from the school were also taking. Okay, so that's why I said this was not a traditional busing situation. We were not bused on yellow buses. We were bused in public New York City public transit buses. We took the bus like some other kids take the bus, right? So that's why I said this was not a typical kind of situation for the cohort that I'm talking about in the book. We went through a different kind of experience. It was very different. So I wanted to describe that in the book. And unfortunately, you know, someone said, why didn't you have some of the guys? I said, well, you know, they left. They left. Okay. Some of the Black guys in class, one in my class, he left the school after that year. He didn't stay. Okay. For whatever reasons his parents had, whatever, but still, you know, so it was just us left. So that's why the focus basically was on, you know, the sisters and their experiences. But it's not to negate that the brothers went through the same thing. Okay. So there's a difference in terms of discussion about perseverance that came about differently for the girls as opposed to Black males. And it goes back to the whole story about how Black males are perceived differently in our society, okay? And so the book talks about that briefly, but that's something we need to address, because if you think it was bad for us, the females, can you imagine what's going through for the brothers? That was what we talked about, okay? And one of the women who talks about in the book, she talks about how she begged the one Black guy left in her class to stay, not to leave her. That's what she said, don't leave me, don't leave me. But she was the only Black female, I think, in the class. And there were like 2 or 3 Black guys, and they left. They didn't stay the whole school year. So these are experiences that we talk about. How do we persevere? And I think it's a difference. And I want to kind of segue, if you don't mind, into persevering as a girl or a woman in our society. Okay, if you don't mind, I'm gonna just segue a little bit, because I thought about this in terms of, you know, why I wrote about just, you know, just the girls who went through experience, and also how gender plays a role in this whole perspective.
Okay.
As we know, United States is basically a patriarchal society. Okay. Okay. So what does that mean? For those of us who are listening, what does that mean? Well, that means that in this society, a patriarchal society, it means that men are given authority over such things as over women in all forms of society. Okay, that's the patriarchal society. Now I've learned, and it's interesting, you know, you have this issue about strong Black women. Okay, well, you know what? That's probably natural. From what my research has shown that, especially having attended going to Africa in 2017, finally I got there, and it was confirmed. Africa over centuries was a matriarchal society. Very big difference. But that was not until you realize, well, why is it that, you know, and they were very powerful women. Okay, they owned land. Women owned land, and they were responsible for deciding what to do with the land that they owned. Okay. That's not taught in our public schools. That's not taught in schools. So the perception is basically the model of this United States where the patriarchal rule, you know, the men are the ones who are in charge, and we have authority over everybody, all the women. Whereas culturally, if you think about it, if you do the research, culturally, if you have African origins or if you have the aspects of Africa, you get an understanding that in Africa for centuries, women were basically respected for what they brought to the table. And they were the ones responsible for the food chain. Okay, they were prosperous. Okay, and as a matter of fact, the kings, the tribal kings, the queen mother, they conferred with the queen mother to determine basically decisions that were made. You didn't consult the king. You spoke to the other kings, but consultation was with the queen mother. And the queen mother, for the kings came through the lineage of the maternal line, not the paternal line in Africa. To this day, pretty much there's still tribes that you come through the maternal line. You know, in our patriarchal monarchies, like there's a king, then the king's son replaces him as the king. Okay, but in Africa, it was matriarchal society, and that's the way in which it pursued. And the consultation was that the queen mother, and it could have been the king's mother. It wasn't the wife, it was the queen. The queen mother was the mother, could have been a mother of the king or a maternal side of the family, you know, person who he consulted with before he made any final decisions. So having learned that and understood that, I had a better understanding of maybe why I persevered and why I decided, okay, I can move this, I can stick with this, because it may be some lineage that comes behind that. Did I know that before? No. Was I taught that in school? No. But it's just something that we need to understand, because, you know, right now, being a female, being a woman, being identifies as a Black woman, even though I have other heritage, but still, the fact is, we don't know these things. When we talk about education, we talk about just not formal education. We have to find out about research. Now, back in the day, the only way you could find out information is looking in an encyclopedia, okay? Hard book. Now, the world's open to everybody because of the internet. So there's no excuse not to know. But part of everything else, like anybody who tells you it's computer science, can tell you, you can only get out of the computer what you put into the computer. So if you don't know what to ask or how to input it, how do you expect to get a decent output? Right. So part of the thinking process of education should be providing people with a mindset where they can explore and they can investigate and they can be inquisitive and they can query about issues and know how to put information in so they can get the information they need to come back out. Okay. So that basically is something that I've been able to do. That's how I've been able to persevere when it comes to me being a woman, comes you know, being a Black woman, how it identifies in terms of even age and money, all that comes into play as well. But I think it comes when you have to persevere. It's not easy. And that's the key. You wonder, oh, what happened? Oh, that person got they don't know what people went through to get to that point. Okay, they don't know. And I say oftentimes it's good to have a good support network. It's good. Okay. Now my background, my mother was very strong female. My father was, he had his own thing, but he was like laid back. But my mother was a go-getter. I think I may have inherited some of that from her, possibly. But at the same time, my experiences, even with my own family, we're all different. We all have different makeup. But part of the difference may be your exposure at an earlier age. Now, some of my research entails looking at early childhood education. That's one of my focal research areas. And if you do not expose children at a young age to what the expectations you want them to have, then how do you expect when they turn 18 to put out performance? But that goes back to the whole issue I just mentioned about if you don't put something in, you're not gonna get certain things out. But many parents, I asked you this question, Mr. Thirlkill. Does anyone teach you how to be a parent? Does anyone ever taught you to be a parent?
No.
Okay. So there are no schools to teach you how to be a parent, correct?
No.
But you go to school to become a lawyer, you go to school to become a CPA, you go to school to become a teacher. Okay. All these professions, even if you want to get a business degree, you can get an MBA. But does anyone teach you to become a parent? No. Okay. You're learning on the job. All right. Okay. Am I correct?
You're right.
Okay. So I say that we need to educate parents, but parents bring knowledge bases to schools that schools don't recognize. And that's another issue that I have. So some of the things I research about early childhood is parents' perception of early childhood, what they want for their children. You need to say parents know their children. They want their children to have the best education. It goes back to my book. My parent, especially my mother, wanted me to have a better education. Did she know that I was going to be confronted with all these ills within our schools and society? No, she had no idea. But she felt this was an opportunity that would give me a better chance in life. And basically, I pretty much have to say it has. Okay. But that's not always a guarantee. I'm just saying that you also need to have parents who are open and receptive to things that may not be what they expected. All right. So my parents took a risk with me. Okay. And if we were talking about child abuse, the experience that many of us who went through desegregation in public schools in New York, that could have been child abuse to some people. Okay.
Yeah.
If you think about it, if you think about the emotional and psychological aspect, yes, it could have been like child abuse. Any other situation is, oh, that's child abuse. But you know what? The parents were willing to take that risk. And they felt this was an opportunity for their children. And they took the risk. And we, as little soldiers, I should say, little, we were just, we were 7, 8 years old. Okay, what do we know? Okay, we were just, okay, different school, whatever, we'll just go through the motion. And apparently, I think the other key was helpful is that I believe all the people that I know who attended the school with me, extremely bright people, extremely bright, just naturally bright people. I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to be boastful, but I'm just saying, looking back on it now in terms of what we've accomplished, what we've done in our lives and so forth, I think about it, I said, wow, okay. But let me look at the other aspect. The other aspect is, why couldn't we have gotten that same education in our own communities?
Yeah.
Okay. I say that because, I was uprooted from my community and put in another situation and coming in contact with exposure to things that I wasn't familiar with. And also the biggest issue was the economic differential between those who attended the school and those of us who came in. Big difference. Okay. So that in itself was a huge wake-up call. But it's also at an early age, early childhood education. It exposed me to potential. Okay. So I was able to persevere in my own way, educationally, okay, socially, and financially, based upon what I was exposed to early on, as opposed to waiting until I got out of college to be exposed to something. So those are the kinds of things I think about being a young girl, because in a patriarchal society, okay, where your expectations of what you're going to accomplish is just okay, well, just get through high school, get married and have kids. Okay. And so that's like, okay, expectation. But because I had the support and encouragement in my family to persevere, to go further, I have 4 degrees, a bachelor's degree, two masters, and a doctorate degree. Okay, right. And I'm saying to you, there were experiences and exposures that I had going through the process, the education process, that allowed me to have the thinking, the mindset that I have, as opposed to just having the degrees. Yeah, we can have a degree, but what kinds of experiences do you have? What kind of relationships are you able to connect with going through that process? All right. It's not yes or no. It's like, it's an intermingling of experiences and relationships that you develop through those processes that later on can assist you financially. At least that should be the goal. Okay. If not, why bother, right? So I'm just saying that, the writing of the book is one piece, but there are other things that I've been able to accomplish throughout my career and in my personal life. I'm just saying, relationships with my friends. I have some of the best friends in the world, and they know who they are. And I believe relationships to me are important because it connects you with the ability to expose yourself to situations. You can be vulnerable and without having to feel like, oh, they're going to talk about me. If they're your friends, they're going to support you. And look, the worst thing that can happen is they say, well, I didn't like what you did, but I said, okay, I got it. They put you, they put you in place. Okay. And if you're okay with that, that's fine. But some people just get disrupted because they haven't had the experiences that may say, it's okay to have a friend say, let's check this out. This may not be the best move for you. What do you think about such and such? You need to have those feeders. Okay. And I've been really fortunate and blessed to have some wonderful friends to this day. And I'm not just saying, I have now my 4th grade friend is the longest friend that I've had now, because the other 2 friends from 2nd grade, 3rd grade have passed away. But I'm just saying to you, I've been able to develop relationships over my entire lifespan. And I continue to do that now. And in my practice as a licensed professional counselor, I've connected with some wonderful clients and even people I've worked with in terms of the professions. In my university work, I've contacted some people, connected with people internationally as well as nationally. So it's not just one perspective, but we look at women, Black women in particular, and put us in a certain place, and that's where you're supposed to be. That goes back to the whole idea of implicit bias. And people have a certain perception of you, and they maintain that, they keep that's all they know. But they need to go beyond what they know. And the people need to be exposed to all kinds of cultures and ethnic backgrounds and different languages. I speak 2 languages. So my point is, it's like, oh, you do? They look at you like, how can you speak another language? You look a certain way, so you can't speak another language. Okay. So those are things we need to get beyond what society has perceived us as. Okay. So that's something I think that helps, because if you don't have a good foundation, then it's difficult to withstand the things that come across. You think about being rooted. Okay. I'm a city girl with a country heart, if you know what that means. Okay. So yeah, both my parents are from country. They didn't grow up in the city, they grew up in the country. So I was able to get that aspect as well, to have that exposure. And that also taught me something. So if you think about a tree is rooted, you put the tree in, okay, and you got to let the roots, the deeper the roots are, the stronger the tree can grow up and not be torn apart. You understand? So the same thing with an individual, with a child, the same thing needs to happen. So we think about our society like, oh, this person had to turn like this way. Well, if the person never had the exposure, was never rooted and had a foundation, how can you expect them to persevere? All right. How can you expect that? So it doesn't happen. And then all we do as a society is we blame them what they didn't accomplish. We blame them because they didn't turn out a certain way. I want to change the trajectory to say, no, let's start from the beginning. Let's help the parents who may not be able to have all this information to be able to nurture and cultivate their children, right? That's the first step we can do within our society. That goes back to the early childhood situation. But then as they're growing up in society, Give them exposure. Give them something positive to look at. Okay. Let them know about themselves. Everybody has some heritage. Know about yourself and then know about other people. Okay. So that's what we're missing. And I'm going to reference this because when I went to Spain several years ago. And in the hotel, this is this offside thing. In the hotel, the concierge person said to me that in order to work at that hotel, the employees had to speak at least 3 languages. I said, are you kidding me? She said, no, English, Spanish, and another language. Or she said, at least 3. I said, 3 languages. I said, well, everybody be unemployed in hotels in the United States. I was just saying it jokingly, but I thought about that because that was significant to me, which meant they were more open about welcoming people from different languages and different countries as a result of that experience. But it also said that within their society, they prepare people to speak other languages because it impacts their economic wherewithal. Right. See, it all goes back to economics. I hate to say it. Okay. It goes back to economics. So you talk about persevering. We do what we have to do to get where we have to go. Okay. That's one of my little cliches. Okay. And I also think about it's better to have and not need than need and not have.
That's right.
Okay. So if you look at it from that point of view, you look at it in terms of the educational attainment. If I didn't have my education, I couldn't be a licensed professional counselor. I couldn't be a professor, right? So that would have been just thrown out the water. So then where that have left me? Okay. I'm just saying that's an example of what it can do for you. Okay. But also, you have to be able to have certain basic information in the beginning to even accomplish the educational attainment.
Mm-hmm.
And many of our systems don't provide that support for people to get that far. Right. So that was something else, I talk about in the book too, about the psychological impact of desegregation, how it impacts, they don't prepare children for that whole experience of going through that process of going to a classroom, going to district outside their neighborhood, and how the teachers treated them. Their teachers, there wasn't a single Black teacher in that school. Okay. And so basically, or even a Latino teacher, there was no diversity. Okay. And I believe into this day, maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3 now total, even to this day, that same school probably doesn't have as much diversity as they should, even in 2021. Okay. But the point I'm saying to you is that somehow or another, we persevered. Okay. We persevered. And I believe the same kinds of experiences are taking place throughout cities and school districts throughout the country. Okay. It may not be the same as it was when I was attending elementary school, but some of those same experiences, because part of it has to do with who's preparing the teachers to have a certain perspective of having appreciation for children who look like me or who speak different languages. Okay. And that's something I'm pursuing as my professor hat. Okay. To be able to have a more inclusive society, we need to prepare teachers to be more inclusive of their thinking. Okay. So that they can appreciate a Dr. Theresa candidate before she becomes a Dr. Theresa candidate. You understand? Right? So that's why I'm saying, fortunately for me, if it wasn't for my 3rd grade teacher, I think my first Black teacher and my only Black teacher in elementary school, I loved her dearly. If it weren't for her recognizing in me and other students of excellence, I don't know where I'd be. Okay. And as much as my parents were trying to support, but if it weren't for that teacher, she saw something in me that maybe some other teacher may not have seen in me. And that changed the entire trajectory of my life moving forward. And I'm thinking every child should have that opportunity. Every child, okay, which is lacking. And if you give them support, surround them with the support network that they need, they can achieve anything. They can achieve anything. And I believe that. That's my belief. I could be wrong, but that's my belief. But they need the support to be able to have someone, if it's not, like I said, my 4th grade in that class for desegregated school, it was one of my friends. She and I spoke almost every night. And if it weren't for her, I may not have survived that 4th grade classroom experience. And I've told her that recently. I told her, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to make it, because I knew there was somebody each day I go to school that had my back. Okay, had my back. Not knowing at the time that was my back, but I'm saying, who had my back. And I think that helps a child to know there's somebody somewhere that supports them and gives them encouragement to keep going. I think that's lacking in our society right now. I think it's sorely lacking in our society. That's my take. I think it's sorely lacking in society.
I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. When you mentioned the economic aspect, because we are in a capitalist society,
Correct.
and the difference now is not only the color, but also the economics. So now teachers are teaching, not even, they're not teaching life skills anymore. It's more like teaching for a test.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as far as economics are concerned, it seems to be that the economics are more focused on the school system than it is on advancing the children.
Correct. Correct. Well, I'll tell you, what you got to think about something. And I should say this as an educator. School doesn't teach you how to make money. It doesn't. I'm just going to call it like I see it. Schools don't teach you how to make money. They don't. They teach you how to maybe read, write, articulate, compute, all right? That really hasn't been, I think the classroom teaches you to work, to become a worker someplace.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. It doesn't teach you to be an entrepreneur. Okay. It doesn't teach you to really own your own business or pursue things to develop that entrepreneurial spirit. Okay. Now, some people are able to do it. Like I said, I was fortunate in terms of having family members who had owned real estate. Okay. So it helped me to understand. I was exposed to that early on to see, oh, okay, this is different. This is different. So I learned that from just being exposed to family members, but that's not given to anyone. All right. So my pursuit of getting my degrees is because things I wanted to do. And along the way, I had I guess, what is the terminology we use? I had a very, my mindset was, I didn't go out and buy designer bags. I didn't go out and buy, I said, my name should be on those jeans. That's my thinking. Okay. I said, like, for example, even watching television, I said, I'm not going to sit and watch 4 hours of TV incessantly. I said, if anything, I'll watch it. If I'm on there, that's different. Okay.
Yeah.
That's my mentality. So that's the way I pursued with my education. That's what I pursued in terms of, I looked at the value of how you can make money in a passive manner. Okay. You understand what I mean by that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Passive income is important. Okay. You can work. Because I've seen how, people work 40 years and, they're worn out.
Yeah.
They're worn out. I'm thinking there has to be another way in which we can do this. So I think part of what we need to teach more is the entrepreneurial spirit within the classrooms. I'm a sports person. I have to tell you, I'm a sports person. I love sports, especially basketball. Grew up in New York City, you can't not love basketball. Okay. So I'm talking about back in the day when basketball was a king in New York City. So
okay.
I'm dating myself here, but that was how it was back in the day. So I'm just saying, because of that exposure, I see now what has happened in terms of that was the only way where brothers could get out of the quote unquote ghetto.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay? And but the sad part is a lot of those people didn't have the support mechanism or people to share with them to tell them how to work on maintaining or pursuing things in their lives so they would be okay when that career ended. Okay. Right. And that's a mishap. That's a mishap. And I'm glad to see some now the people are doing it differently than they did in the past. Okay. So I'm just saying to you as a whole, I think that's really, really good. But I think that we have to find a way that people could understand what they bring. I believe if you prepare yourself, it's like, I think people, I think I have to be biased here. I think from having made that trip to Africa, it's taught me a lot that I didn't know before.
Definitely.
And when I look at how people move in groups, I said, look, if I came from something, my blood's from here. I said, there's nothing I cannot do. I can do anything if I can't do this. Okay. But they went through. I said, there's no question in my mind. But it's good to know that there are ways in which you could, if you're prepare yourself, we all have a purpose. Okay. God-given purpose. I believe it's a purpose. Okay. So you have to find what it is that your purpose is on this earth while you're here.
Right.
Okay. So it's either you're going to find it one way or the other, either a good way or not so good way. Okay. Right. And because I don't want to use the term bad, I don't like to use terms that are negative terms, because what you say out your mouth says a lot about you, says a lot about what other people perceive them when you say it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to avoid using negative terminologies. Right. So in essence, I'm saying people need to feel they're worthy. Okay. They have value. They have something to offer. And if you have and prepare yourself, you're going to get the money. But it's what you're going to do with the money when you get it. Okay. And many people aren't taught how to use the money that they do have. It's not how much you get. It's a lot about what you do with what you have and ways to multiply that.
Right.
Okay. And we're using standard procedures of doing that, and you're never going to get that far. Right. But it also goes with relationships. If you have relationships, if you don't have, okay, let me put it this way. A friend of mine said, you go to certain schools so you can develop a relationship with people, because then you come out, those relationships are built on you. Now, a lot of the students, when I went to college, some of their parents owned companies. Okay, they own companies, they own businesses. Okay, so if you network with those people, or if they choose to network with you, vice versa, then there's a likelihood that maybe at some point, if you can connect, then you all kind of, get together and do things. But oftentimes, women and people of color don't have those networks. So it limits them for the opportunity to pursue certain things because of the lack of access. Okay. Not that they're not capable, lack of access may make the difference.
It's not what you know, it's who you know.
That's right.
The little cliches that matter.
That's right. But let me tell you something, but let me just say something else. Whatever it is, if opportunity comes about, you got to be prepared. You got to be prepared. See, that's something I grew up. You've got to be prepared. You've got to be the best at what you do. Okay. So that it helps. But some people figure, oh, I can get by with this. I can get by with that. Well, when it comes down to it, when it really comes down to it, when you get in a situation where you have an opportunity, if you're not able to fulfill it, then what happens? It blows up in the smoke. Okay. Yeah. So part of it is, you talk about persevering. I've persevered, but I've always felt that I had to prepare myself. Okay. Because when you prepare yourself, okay, and you have certain things to do it, the opportunities will open up and you'll be able to take care of you. You'll be able to go in and do this. You'll be able to go and do that. Okay. I mean, look, like I said before, I'm a licensed professional counselor. I didn't start my private practice until 2012. And you know why 2012? Because Sandy Hook tragedy took place. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm in Connecticut. I've been licensed for a long time, but I didn't have a private practice. So I got a call from the president of the Counseling Association in Connecticut and said they needed more practitioners. And in the area, where I work was near Sandy Hook, Connecticut. And I said, well, I don't even have an office. She said, get you an office, I'll put you on the list. I contacted one of my former graduate students who had an office. I said, do you have an extra space? She said, yes, I can it for you. Yes, absolutely. That's what started me on this road with the private practice. Okay. Wow. Okay. So I'm just telling you. And then, of course, I became a board certified telemental health provider way before it was, way before COVID. COVID now, it's like, oh, everybody's telemental health, telehealth. Well, I've been a board certified telemental health provider before term was called telemental health. I was a distance credential counselor in 2004. I learned how to work using a computer online with my clients. So you have to prepare yourself, because you don't wait until you need it. It goes back to the whole cliche I said, it's better to have and not need than need and not have. Okay. I needed it now for COVID. Okay. But I already had it. Yeah. So money's coming to me because of that. my experience, my exposure, being a licensed professional counselor and having the board certified telemental health provider, I was already ready for this. I was already ready for the COVID and not have to go out your house and be able to counsel people online. I mean, that's my expertise. I'm board certified. So I learned this years ago before I even needed it. So that in itself is a lot about how you prepare yourself. But I think it goes back to my early experience in elementary school. That desegregation process. Being prepared was so important that you have to think about how do you keep moving forward? Because I said to myself, you don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
All right. But oftentimes we're taught, wait until you need it. No, you don't know when you're going to need it. So just expose yourself, get the experience, get the certification, get the license, reach out, but make connections as you're doing all of this. And I'm gonna tell you a quick story. I'm a storyteller, as you can probably imagine. I had I was not feeling very well. I think it was 2017, 18, I can't remember, either 2017 or 2018. I was speaking at a conference, and I was chairing a session at a national conference for one of my organizations, and I wasn't feeling well. And I said I was going to cancel. I said, no, I can't not leave because I already committed. See, that's another thing. Be committed to something. This is a perfect story why you say about being committed. Someone said, oh, I'm going to feel good. I'm going to cancel. I just won't show up. I said, that's not me. That's not how I was taught. So I showed up not feeling well. Okay. I was able to go and do the session. I did everything I had to do for the session. And as I was getting off the stage, someone approached me and said that they'd like to do something with me. Like, what? We're going to work on something, with some research together. I said, okay, like that. We exchanged cards. The very next year, we got together and wrote a grant together. Now, had I not shown up for that conference, not feeling well, I would have never met this person. This person would never suggest we do this. We would never got together, work on this grant. And now we're not only colleagues, but also friends. So we're going to continue to do things that's going to continue to develop. Okay. So that's why I'm saying you have to get out there. You have to get exposure, and you never know. Okay. So my thing is, it would have been easy to say, oh, I don't feel well, I just won't show up. Well, I showed up, and look what happens. So when I say about opportunities, you have to be able to look at opportunities, because in that case, money still flows from that. But if you don't have it, that's one less connection you have.
Wow.
Okay.
I read there's little excerpts that Steve Harvey does for motivation on his Instagram page. And today he said, this is exactly what you just said, in different terms. But he said he prayed that his brand would go global and that he would have a bigger reach. Now, I don't know if you remember, but a few years ago, might have been 2017, he did a pageant, and he messed up and called out the wrong winner. Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
And oh man, everyone talked about him and all of that. He said, well, what happened from that is a couple of weeks later, he had the most views on Google, like all-time views for his name. So it's just, that's just how it works, man. It's your steps are ordered.
That's right.
You know, right. you could fall, you just have to show up.
That's right.
You know, that's
right. That's why I said you don't know what opportunity is going to come out of it, because some people feel you have certain steps you have to take. I'm not that traditional. First of all, I'm a Black female, and I'm at a certain age now. And people think, you get a certain age, you give up on life. I said, no. I said, let me tell you something. Somebody asked me, when are you going to retire? I said, who are you talking to? I said, let me tell you something. When they asked Oprah when she's retiring with her billions, then you ask me if I'm retired. Okay. Hello. So I'm just saying to you, that's the instance is you still have things you have to still do here on this earth. And you're not going to go until that time comes. So you need to cultivate, pursue, and make the best you can of the situation. And the other thing I want to say this is that there have been people who have helped me, not knowing they've helped me. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. And all situations that aren't so good doesn't mean things are going to work out. Sometimes, I'm going to talk about my religion here, but basically, some of the people who mistreat you, do you wrong, mess you up, your footstools.
Yep.
Because it gives you the energy you need to circumvent all of that. And that's another aspect of perseverance.
Right.
So that makes you stronger to go on and still keep going and doing that. Now, I have to say, some of us aren't able to do that. But I think that if you have that core understanding, that you look at all situations are there for a reason.
Definitely.
Okay? For a reason. And you need to look and see, what is this here for? What's this opportunity here for? Why did that door close on me? What happened there? Why didn't I get that position? Or why didn't this person get this contract? Okay. So I'm just saying to you, my friends and I, we didn't get the grant, but you know what? We've got now a lifetime relationship. We're going to be applying for another grant before you know it. Okay. So I'm just saying, but now we've got the connection. We know what to do. We know how to pursue it. All right. And there are other opportunities going to come out of that. But at the same time, I'm saying to you that we limit ourselves when we say, well, this person looks like that, so I'm not going to include them in the network. Or this person dresses that way, I can't put this person with me. Okay. You have to go beyond what you see and what you hear. Because if you understand, it's like, for me, I don't know what the future holds, but I know who holds the future. You got me? Okay. And I think as long as I have that, I'm going to be okay. All right. And I've been really blessed. I've really been blessed. So I have a look at that, a very positive perspective. And I think that this journey is going to continue, but you're going to have to want to keep going. Who talked about, I think one of those, I don't know who it was. It's about if you fall down 7 times, get up to 8. So, we always feel like, we give up so easy, and we do. And I say that we, in terms of include that many people, especially Black women specifically, we just give up. Oh, well, I'm not a man, so I can't. I don't think so. Okay. I'm thinking we all have something to offer, but I also go back to the original understanding that in Africa, there was a matriarchal society. So, when I think about my female ancestors, I think about what they did, and that I'm like a product of all of that. Okay. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how do they do that with limited means, for maybe not as much education, or even with education and being discriminated against and not getting a position because you happen to be a person, a Black person, or you couldn't speak the language because you couldn't speak English. I think these are all things that we have to look upon, because I believe everybody has worth. Everybody has worth. That's my attitude. So everybody brings something that needs to be offered in the society. Everybody, but you just have to find, like I said, with children, every child has a gift. And I say to teachers, your goal is to assist that child to find that gift and help them cultivate that gift. Okay, that's what it is. Okay, so I think that, to me, people ask me about being an educator. That's my educational model, I guess. That would be my mantra. One of my mantras, to be able to cultivate people and have them pursue things. And that's how I persevere, because there's always somebody else who needs that motivation, and whatever, I just keep plugging away. That's my attitude.
That's awesome. I was I was listening to your about perseverance, and also about how perseverance works for you, based on certain situations. You may not know it, you go through it, and then it molds you into being the person that you are. I heard you tell a story about how you used to raise your hand in elementary school. You used to raise your hand and the teacher wouldn't call on you. So you figured out, okay, all right, I won't raise my hand when I know the answer. That's when
right.
she'll call on me. So you were able to not only figure that out, right? But
right.
I'm pretty sure you took that on later on in life, how to kind of adjust to those type of situations when you figured someone wasn't going to give you your way.
Absolutely. It wasn't, see, it's a key difference. It's not just having my way. It was presenting my best. See, I believe in the best. Okay. So basically, this person was limiting me for opportunity to be my best. And I'm thinking, here I am, an 8-year-old child, not knowing that's what I was doing. But I got together with another friend. We said, okay, don't raise your hand, because if we raise our hands, she's gonna not call on us. And if we don't raise our hands, she's gonna think we don't know the answer. So that says a lot about what, people have a perception that they don't know the answer because they're not participating. But no, that's not true. All right. But that's how most people think. You're not participating, so therefore you don't know how to do the work. That's like in any other job. If you get a job, if you get a position, if you don't show up, well, the person doesn't know how to do it. That's why they didn't show up. No, part of it is the opportunity. But then at the same time, you've got other people who won't call on you because they don't want people to know that you have this potential. Everybody has potential. Everybody. Okay. It's how you feel about presenting it, and your opportunities are available to you. And not everybody's going to see, they're not going to see your worth. Okay. And if you let that stop you from pursuing what you really believe you're capable of doing, then we've lost several people, 1,000 people because of that. Okay? Thousands. Okay. And I'm saying that there has to be, if you keep it within yourself. See, my thing is, I guess I felt good about being who I was. I tell students now in the classroom, the first thing I say, look, I'm comfortable in my skin. I don't know about you, but I'm very comfortable in my own skin. Okay. But that's not very obvious to some people. They just assume because of our society how I feel. They feel I feel a certain way because of what I look like. No, and that I'm a female. I'm look like I'm short stature, like 5'3". Okay, I'm short. I'm not like a 5'7" young woman or whatever. Okay, So that people perceive people in different ways about their physical attributes. Okay, so I understand that as well. All right. Now, in my family, we come in all different kind of complexions. So, that's another thing, how, a certain way, this person's pretty because this person's pretty and that person. No, I'm not having it. I'm like, I want to make sure people understand that every child, every person has value. Everybody has worth. Okay. And when we don't do that, we lose out as a society. We lose out as a country. Okay. We lose out as a world. So one of the things that I want to pursue, and I believe, people say, oh, you got to have money. Well, money comes in different ways, in different forms. Okay. All right. So you don't know what's going to come out of situations. Okay. But the thing is, you need to be in the game. You need to be in it. You got to be in it. Like New York State had a motto for the lottery years ago. You got to be in it to win it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just saying, what difference if you're out in the fringes? You're out in the fringes. Then there's no participation. And many people perceive people who look like me to be in the fringes. I'm like, nah, I'm in here. Okay. But that's because I was able to have a good foundation growing up. I believe my foundation, even that desegregation experience about how to teach a distance. I mean, that was a complete test. She literally dissed us. Okay. I mean, it was consistent and it was obvious. And I'll tell you something. How you're perceived by the people who are teaching you has a lot to do with how you're able to persevere. Now, I'll tell you another story. When I was in high school, and this is high school, this was the second Black teacher I had. No, the second one was in my junior high school, but in high school, I had a math teacher. And I was excited, a math teacher, a Black math teacher, a female. Oh my gosh, I was like in heaven, because that was not typical. You didn't find, first of all, women, a few women, but women of a Black woman teacher, geometry, really? Yes, that works. So I was all excited. I was doing my best in the class. I'm gonna tell you this story, and I told this to some of my students. The first exam comes out, and the teacher takes a paper and she holds it up, and she says, oh, we have 100 in this class. And then she names the person. It happened to be, a male student. It happened to be a Black male, which is cool. But when she said, of course, she said, oh, and I said, oh, really? Okay, we're gonna fix that. All right, that's what I said in my mind. Okay, so after that test, I sat next to that same guy who got that 100. I said, okay, we're gonna work this together here. So I sat next to him, and we did assignments together and so forth and so on. This next test came up. The teacher says, oh, we have 2 students in the class who received a 100 in the exam. And then she says this, listen to this paraphrase. Of course, so-and-so, which is the same Black male student, right? Of course, she said, of course. Otherwise, she assumed he was going to get it, right? And then she said, and Theresa Canada, like that. Okay, but what happened? Okay, let me tell you what happened. After the first test, I thought was really resounding. After the first test, all the girls, mostly in the class, after the first test, they all went together in like a little seat in the corner in the back. And all they talked about for the rest of the class was, their lipstick or, what they were going to do in the weekend. I'm saying, no, I'm sitting next to a guy who got 100 and we're gonna work this together. Okay, that was the difference. So she lost those female students. She lost them. Okay, and they never came back and got a higher grades. They just existed. Okay, I'm saying to you that says a lot about what was it that made me say, I'm gonna sit next to a person who got 100 and we're gonna work this together. And the other group of girls who got together in the back of school and back to the classroom just gave up and started talking about lipstick and what they're gonna put in their nail. I'm like, no, I don't know what exactly it was, but I do know that she lost those students. Now, this was a class that were all well-educated students in this class. She lost all those girls. She lost them. And I'm thinking, what happened? So I think about what you have to say to young people to give them the encouragement that they can do, okay? And what we do as a society, when they can't do, you penalize them, you incarcerate them, you kick them out of school, okay? All things that happen negative, but you don't think about what you've said that got to this point, right?
Definitely. A huge debate going on right now, and I like your input on this, is homeschooling in the Black community. Because of the reason that you just said, a lot of it starts from home. But also there is no encouragement in the school. And the perception of just being Black, and even the content that's being taught. So there is a debate, and I see it all the time, and a lot of people are in our community are homeschooling.
Yes, it's a big deal.
Is that a direction?
That's not unusual, but let me just tell you, this is interesting. Homeschooling really started with people of color, because they couldn't go to the schools.
Yeah.
Okay. But the key was many of the parents may necessarily have had the ability to pursue them in terms of the levels of education. Now, some could, not many. All right. So it would be limiting. But part of the issue was that was a choice that they didn't have a choice. Now, see, I have a relative who was one of the she used to teach in a one-room schoolhouse. I have a cousin who taught in a one-room schoolhouse in the early 1900s. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Okay. So that is another thing. When you know about family members who've done things at all odds, that should give you enough, to say, hey, if that relative did that back then and they were still able to, why is it, what's happening now? Why can't you do things now? Okay, but part of it is because some of that history is not shared. All we talk about is the negative, all things that, about the don'ts and what we don't have. What about what we did have? Okay, so, I'm saying growing up, this was a rural part of the South that we used to drive by, visiting relatives, and my mother would point out that was where Cousin Katie's schoolhouse was. Cousin Katie's to teach, and I actually saw the structure. So I'm just saying, in my mind, you got to remember something. Psychologically, children's brains are developing. Okay, what are you putting into the brain? All right. So homeschooling, if parents had if they, just like now with COVID, I mean, who's losing out? The ones who are losing out, who don't have computers, okay? Who are taking class on their cell phones, okay? So who do you expect is going to be the ones who don't have as much access and ability to follow up? The ones who don't have the right kind of equipment. It's the same thing that happened back in desegregation. The reason why the Brown versus Board of Education decision came about is because Dr. Kenneth Clark did this wonderful experiment between the Black dolls and the white dolls experiment back in the 1950s, okay? Dr. Kenneth E. Clark was a well-known Black psychologist who was part of providing information to the Brown decision, Brown versus Board of Education decision. And he was saying that Black children were being harmed because of basically psychologically, because they didn't have the same access to equipment and materials that white students had. And it wasn't really about sitting next to a white kid in the classroom, to be honest with you. It was about, if you prepare, the segregated schools were not equally funded or equipped, point blank. And the same thing took place when I was in my school, when I was in kindergarten, first and second and third grade. Our schools were overcrowded. We didn't have a gym. The lunchroom was converted to the gym when we weren't in lunch, or we played a small little courtyard behind the school, okay? So homeschooling itself would have been fine But if the parents didn't have the equipment at home to provide the education for their children, who was missing out? The children would be missing out. So if you want to have students in a school, they need to provide them with the opportunity to have access to the best educational equipment, the best technology, everything they need to survive. So to be honest with you, I'm thinking homeschool is nothing new. When they couldn't go to the schools, they did what they could do. And there's a lot of people who grew up in the early 1900s who did okay in the homeschool. They didn't go into the school. You understand what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. Look, and I tell students now, they say, oh, it's hard. Let me tell you something. I said, look, my cousin Katie taught to all kids and all ages in one room schoolhouse. There was no special ed. There was no resource room. There was no reading specialist. There was no extra stuff. You had children of all ages in one little room in a school, but they were determined to learn. They were determined.
That's right.
We don't seem to have that determination. And I think that homeschool if you think about if parents are provided information that they can use, homeschool, okay? Homeschool, if that's their choice. They should have. See, that's the other thing. It's a Thirlkill. I believe people should have choices. Okay? We didn't have choices all the time, okay? So I believe people should have choices. So in essence, if there are parents who want to homeschool, yes, they have the equipment and information they have, do it. Okay, and I'll tell you right now what's happening around this country with this whole issue with the critical, CRT. Let me tell you something. The experience I went through in my book can't touch what people are going through, okay? If they only knew, there's stuff that wasn't written. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the book that talked about, but there's a lot of stuff in there that's not in there that would say, how did you survive that? I said, only with the grace of God. That's what I'm saying, basically, literally. So I'm saying to you, yes, homeschooling is okay. I'm not knocking homeschooling. I think parents should have a choice, okay? Black parents really didn't have choices back in the day. They didn't have choices, Mr. Thirlkill. They didn't have them.
With that choice and that being said, another segue debate, well, I guess based on that is the question, was desegregation a good idea in the first place?
Let me just say, the reason why desegregation was promoted was because of the because of the inequities in the all Black schools. That was it. For some reason, we want to make it nice and sweet. Oh, it's bad. I'm telling you something. Look, I have family members who were in all Black schools, who were principals, teachers in all Black schools, okay, in the rural South. And I'm gonna tell you something. As a kid, I'm at an age now where I can tell you, I was a child and I would go visit my relatives in North Carolina. We were in North Carolina, my mother's state. And our schools in New York City started later. So we were still down with family members, and school started in August, in early August back then. And I'm gonna tell you, and they were all Black schools. Okay, I didn't know that at the time, because I wasn't in an all Black school, even before I went to the so-called desegregated situation. We had students. I had a Chinese friend, I had a Latino friend, so it was like it was completely. But I'm saying to you that the desegregation process, it showed that these kids really needed to have equity. There needs to be provide the same thing, but for the children in the school as you do another, the Black schools you do another school. So desegregation, in a sense, really served what purpose? All the Black schools were eliminated. And if they had a school that was going to take over, the Black principal no longer was a Black principal. Maybe they gave him the assistant principalship, maybe, but it wasn't a guarantee. So all the Black principals lost their positions, Black principals, okay? Everybody was moved into the white schools, okay, right? And so it changed the trajectory in terms of where people were going to be placed and who was leading what. So everything changed. I'm just saying to you, and even in my book, we talk about the desegregation process in the North. And the majority of the girls in the book said, if they could provide the same thing in the school we were in, then they would stay in that same school, if it was all Black. That's what they said. And so there's something to say about that that we were uprooted. It goes like that whole tree. You uproot people, what happens? You can sway this, you uproot it. So you're bouncing here and there. So you lose your foundation. Whereas the students who were in the schools that were predominantly white, they had their foundation. They had their foundation. Okay. So you got people from outside coming in who are missing their foundation, and now they're vulnerable in another setting. So I believe that the desegregation process itself, the intent for New York City schools in the fact wasn't so much about desegregating the schools. It was more about filling the coffers or the seats of kids who were no longer there. Okay, there's a clear distinction between that. Specifically, the school that I attended. Now, maybe there were some schools that some of that took place, but it's always the Black children going out of their district, going someplace else. Yeah. There was never the opposite. Okay, even to the day, I don't know if they have anything that's just, the magnet schools was a thing that came in to try to make it so that's the suburban kids come into the city kids go into the suburbia. I'm gonna tell you, get what you can where you can and just make it the best. That's my attitude. Get what you can and make it the best. All I'm saying to you is that I argue for equity in schools. Educational equity is give us what we deserve to have and provide us so we can have the same, if not better, way to enhance the children's lives. It doesn't have to be because of, who says an all-Black school can't be successful? I mean, I know people who went to all-Black schools who were very successful. You go back to all the traditional people who grew up back in the early 1920s, 30s, they went to all-Black schools. Look how successful they were, okay? You came out with judges. Look, Thurgood Marshall, he went to an all-Black school, okay? Yeah. So I'm just saying to you, it's just that the problem is we have to provide the best, but it goes back to perceptions. How do you perceive people who look like you and me? How do you perceive them? If you feel they don't deserve the best, then you're not giving them the best. Right. It goes back to people have to understand everybody deserves to have the opportunity to pursue things in this society. That's all it's about. I'm not saying, you got to take from somebody. I'm not saying you're taking from somebody. I'm thinking, now this is a little bit off. I see you have records in the background. I'm an old school Motown person, okay? Yeah, all right. I'm a James Brown person. I'm gonna give you a little James Brown phrase when I say about that. I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Just open the door and I get it myself. Okay? Right. Am I right? Okay. Right. So that's what I'm saying. People just don't understand that people who may look like me or they feel they have certain perceptions. Why can't we have the best? Why can't we have the best?
Yeah, I totally agree. Story about myself is I went to pretty much all white school and elementary throughout, junior high. I got to high school. I did my freshman, sophomore, junior year. I was like, this just don't feel right. It just, even though I know all these people and I've been here. So I went to the closest hood that I could find and enrolled myself into an all-Black school, high school. Mm-hmm. And I totally loved it there. I could communicate better. Mm-hmm. I was understood better. Mm-hmm. And the people that were surrounding me, they had a lot of pride just based on who they were. And like you say, I know so many people that went off to college and, became doctors and lawyers. And I went to college with a bunch of them. And it may have been less on a scale of what you had to offer, but the pride and the willingness, the determination was a lot more than the previous school that I was at. So it's very, it comes down to just dedication, I believe. And, just having pride in being taught, learning, having perseverance, those type of things. And I guess with that question, then I'll let you go after this, but this is a personal question, is do you believe that there is a systematic school to prison pipeline?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. If you look at, statistics have shown how that they have, especially Black males who are part, they go to special ed at an early age, just automatically. If you know, like they still say something in school, the Black child gets suspended. So many more Black males get suspended almost automatically. And it all goes back to the implicit bias that people have, okay? They have this perception that this child's not capable of doing things because of what he looks like. Who, you know, that's what they're saying, okay? So therefore, they're gonna punish him more so than with another child. I mean, it's obvious. Think about what's happening. This judge someplace in the West Coast who thought that he was gonna ruin this young man's life, so he didn't give him a certain I mean, I'm like, what are you talking about? Okay. So that tells you how the mind psychologically we've grown up, and the whole thing about, oh, kids don't know color. Yes, they do know color. Okay. And I'll tell you why. My 4-year-old nephew, I remember my father was picking me up from the airport one day, and from the airport. And this is in New York City. This is LaGuardia Airport. And my nephew was with him. He was only 4 years old, who I taught to read at the age of 3. Young Black man. I taught him to read at the age of 3. So it's doable, okay? So I'm just telling you, my father was there, and my father said, what's the matter? He said, my nephew was saying, people would come up the airport. He would say, Black man, white man, Black lady. He was clearly obvious about the color of a person's skin. He was clearly obvious. But my father was embarrassed by that, because in his generation, you didn't make, you wouldn't say that. You would make those distinctions. So when people say kids don't know color in age, they do. He was only 4 years old. He knew automatically, and he had been exposed to other people, but he knew clearly. So what I'm saying is the psyche, the psychological perception people have of other people starts at an early age, early age, okay? And so what you expose your children to early on leads them to have to process and think later on as they become young adults, and so forth and so on, okay? And I think the best thing we can do is be able to have exposure to different people, different cultures, and not just the United States. We have this perception in the United States that people have no idea what happens outside the United States. And I'll tell you, we need to get outside and see what other people do. Then you maybe come back and say, okay, this is what we need to do here, okay? So I think that one of the things I'm concerned about moving forward is that about the fact that what's going to happen moving forward. I don't know. We don't know what's going on now. I have no idea what's going on now moving forward. I just know that everybody needs to have an opportunity to make a difference moving forward. Now, how that's going to happen, no, but the prisoner pipeline needs to stop. But you got to think about it. Who's mostly employed? I'm not going to say, right? Look who the jobs that we are in a post-industrial society, okay? So for people who don't have the degrees or have the certifications or have the licenses, what are the options available for them for types of employment? As long as certain people can do the work that I'm not because I have, like I said, I know, family members who was head of, like my sister was a correctional officer at one point. So I'm just saying to you, what does it say? Who will need those jobs? So you got to have people to be in that situation so those people can maintain their jobs, right? And I'll tell you a story behind that. When I was in college, there was a friend, she was older, we met her. There's another story, I'm gonna tell you how we met, but I had some friends and I met this person, this woman and her family, and she worked at Attica Prison, okay, which was one of the largest, secured penitentiaries in New York State. And she said, what did she say? I'm afraid she meant about they can, get rid. In other words, she said, they can, I want them to get rid of my job. I said, why would you say? Because what she was saying indirectly, I think I understood this, I guess maybe paraphrasing, she'd rather not work to do what she's having to do to be in that position with all the majority black males in Attica prison. That's what she was saying. So I understood that. So in that sense, if you don't have these prisons with people in it, those people who work there won't have jobs. And the majority of people who work in those settings aren't like the prisoners in the facilities. That's what I'm saying. Okay. So that prisoner pipeline is very true. And any system our system is going to support that to maintain these jobs, which people need to have to take. And if you look at where they're located, I don't know about Texas, but in New York State, they're located places that people don't want to live in. Okay. Right. So people who live in those towns need those jobs so they can have work. Right. And I think that even still, if you look at what can take place, starting from early on in kindergarten, first grade, how young Black males are perceived, the perception is key. And I'm helping, hopefully, to expose future teachers to look at everybody and their worth. That's one of the things I try to work on in my classes, what I'm trying to do at my university. People can say everybody has value, everybody has worth, okay? Everyone teach to all, not just to some, to all. And my experience having gone through this desegregation process was obvious. You know, the teachers didn't call us, you know, for certain things, they wouldn't call us. Not only that, we go, they wouldn't let us be monitors. You know, you had to be, you know, monitors had special, nobody could be a monitor. Okay, you can even be a monitor to go places. Okay, little things like that that kids have in school. We missed out on that. We didn't have those opportunities because they didn't perceive us as having excellence. When in fact, every single one of us in that school that came through that process, we were all excellent students. We were top. We were the cream of the crop from our previous schools. They took the cream at the top out of the schools and put us in these other situations. And it left the other students, not that they were all bad, but that was the other key. So look how we were treated. So I'm thinking, going back to what happened with what happened to all the Black males? Why couldn't they stay? Why didn't they make it? But you know, my chapter, there's another chapter in there that one of the girls talking about, she was begging the brothers, they stay, don't leave me here by myself. She was the only Black person left in the classroom, okay? Because the Black males, it was just different. They didn't have, it was even worse for them. So this prisoner pipeline is a very serious thing. It's not much different. I mean, if you go in special ed, you get the punitive stuff that takes place, you know, in school systems. That's troubling. So we need to have administrators who understand the cultural perspective that's taking place. Okay? It needs to be taught within our administrative programs to have, but you know, it goes, you can have all kind of laws in the world, but if you don't get to the heart of people, really nothing's going to change, right? And I think that everybody brings some value to their situations. But I think also people who've been exposed to being humiliated, who's been discriminated against, who's been kicked to the curb so many times, at some point they give up. And then you wonder why. Look, how many homeless people in the streets, okay? These people were brilliant, okay? Look what happened to them. There was one twist to turn. That's why they're in the streets. But people don't think about that. They're always like, oh, don't get next to me. That could have been me.
Yeah.
Okay? That could have been me. But see, I don't think people think like that. I'm saying everybody deserves a chance to be the best they can be. Give every child. So this, you know, look at the classrooms now. Black women outnumber Black males in colleges throughout this country. Why is that? Okay. So, but you're going to find them in jails, but you won't find them in colleges. Mm-hmm. Right. So yes, there is a legitimacy in terms of that happening, and it could be just minute situation, just like I said, you know, just going around the wrong corner, like all of a sudden, boom, okay, and you're penalized for something, and so then if you get through K through 12, okay, they drop out. You know, there's some move. Was it, you know, Mr. Clark, Lean on Me, the movie. That was a really good demonstration of, you know, he was like, you know, row. But that was good. That was good leadership style. Okay?
Right.
It was controversial, but he said these kids are going to learn. He's going to. Mm-hmm. I mean, what's best for these kids? Okay. But that was an example. And there was another one out in California. Have Escalade. I can't think of his last name right now. But anyway, he was able to allow Latino students. Took the SATs, they scored so high, the SAT administrators believe they all cheated. And they had to take the test again, and they still passed. Wow. Because these were kids from poor neighborhoods who can't, you know, many of them are immigrants, and he gave them what they needed to give them encouragement. They can do this, and they did. They rose up to the challenge. Okay, you need to do that with all children, and not think one person's less than the other. All right, so basically, we have to deal with this prisoner pipeline, because if you don't, I mean, even right now, I mean, I'm thinking about my own education. The only Black males in my doctoral program, they weren't even my program, I'm talking about just in graduate school, were from other countries. They weren't from the United States of America. Wow. They were from the islands or Africa. Not one single doctoral student was from graduate student that at that time was in from the United States of America. Okay. So I'm just telling you that's something we have to think about. Okay. We have to think about those issues because I think right now more so than ever, especially what's happening in this country right now, we have to think about that because it's really a serious situation. And we have to give people support because they bring something to this the fabric of this country. They bring something to the fabric, not take away. But if you don't think, if you want to make a change, get people to believe that they can be somebody. Okay. But if they don't have a belief that they can be somebody,
anything goes.
that's right. That's it. I mean, understandably, but that's what happens. I'm just telling you, we've not done a good job of that in this country. We need to do a better job. And then you know what? Then you have plenty of millionaires. But see, I'm telling you something. You do this, money will come. Okay. And you get people, relationships, develop them, and it will come. Okay. You know, people ask about, one of my colleagues who heard about the podcast come up. Well, you got to tell me. I said, I can tell you anything. You should already know that. Okay. But it goes back to relationships, partnerships, confidence in your own ability. You have what you need to get what you want.
Yeah.
But some people don't know how to do that. They haven't taught. They haven't been guided. They haven't been supported. Okay. I mean, even within families. Okay? So I just think that that's so important. I'm about trying to make a difference. One of the things I say to people, I want to make a difference before I die. That's one thing I want to make a difference before I die. Okay, I don't know, but that's one of the goals that I have. Is people say, "Oh, you already made a difference in people's lives," but see, my whole thing is about being the best that you can be. You know, having all my degrees. Yeah, having all my degrees or something. But you know what? I understood because I know, from my mother's experience, my father's experience. My father was brilliant in mathematics, brilliant math head. Okay, but he didn't have the opportunity that I had. Okay. So, you think about opportunity also presents itself. You got to have opportunity to be able to do that. All right. And then if you're not supported, then you give up. Okay. Then you give up. But I'm just saying to you, but that's okay. I'm doing okay. And I'm going to be okay. Okay. I've got things I'm going to move forward with beyond my book. And I'm looking forward to those challenges. And hopefully we can still connect and I can, we can work on this because I believe, people have to know they have it within themselves. If they want to be a millionaire, you can be a millionaire. Okay. But you just can't talk. You got to do you just can't talk the talk. You got to do the walk. And many people don't know how to do the walk or afraid to do the walk.
Okay? That's right.
Afraid to do the walk.
If you have the supporting cast and the correct tools, focus on getting your tools and a job will come. Opportunity will present itself. There's a saying that I like that I go by. It says that the teacher doesn't show up until the student is prepared. And that is so true in the sense of you don't even notice it. You don't notice that opportunity until you have prepared yourself for that opportunity. Then someone will show up saying, "Hey, here's the next step."
That's right. Absolutely. That's it. But you have to be prepared.
Yeah.
You gotta be prepared. Most people aren't. They figured they want somebody to make them something. They put them in. I'm thinking maybe that might work for some folks. It don't work for us. Okay. Don't work for me. So I'm just saying to you, when I step up, I know I feel confident that I'm prepared for whatever circumstances take place. And a lot of times people feel they don't have to prepare themselves. They think, oh, what's going to happen? Maybe it'll happen for Johnny or Janice over there. But you know what? It's not going to happen. But you got to be prepared. When the opportunity does present itself, you got to be able to know what to do. Okay, not just, okay, I'm here now. No. Look, I'm telling you, I keep saying to people, you talk about, oh, what was me? I said, I don't want to hear it. I said, let me tell you something. If you think about how people persevered when they didn't even have 1/4 of what we have opportunity to have access to, and they still accomplished, forget it. All right. So I'm saying to you, this is what needs to be taught to all people, specifically, children of color. They need to see that people can still pursue. Don't let people think that you won't be able to accomplish things or be an achievement-oriented person because of what you look like, your gender, where you came from, what neighborhood you came from, okay, who your parents were, okay. All those characteristics, people limit themselves. And I'm saying to you, I believe part of it has to do, you need to have exposure, because if you only see what you see right in front of your face, you're never going to get there. You're never going to get there. All right. And I'm just saying, fortunately for me, I was exposed to things, like I said, family members who were in real estate and who didn't have that much education, but able to connect with people and be able to develop finances and businesses because of that. And I was exposed to that. Okay. But I cultivated that and took it in a different way. Okay. But then at the same time, I'm not necessarily going to, about my book. I said, yeah, I wrote the book and it's an academic book. So let me tell you, can I talk about the book a little bit? The book is academic. Let me tell you something. But that's not all it's about. I'm saying to people, and I say to people now, if they want to purchase a book, that's fine. But what I'd like for them to do is to be able to get their schools they graduated from or their neighborhood libraries, have them get the book and put in their schools. Have them buy the book and put in their public libraries so people can have access. So that's the thing. People think, oh, it's too expensive because it's like a textbook price book. Let me tell you something. The information in here will be valuable to people who want to persevere. It's nothing else. But if you can get it to a school library and have it accessible for those children in school or the college library, and you hear about it, if they read it, they'll say, oh, if they did this then, how can I not do this now, right? But they don't know that this exists. They don't know about. Matter of fact, I'll tell you, one of the students, she wasn't in my, she was a former student of mine. She told me that she didn't know there was segregated schools in the North.
I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't really know. They might struggle with trying to consider, but don't really know, or especially don't know someone that went through the experience. So,
well,
yeah.
We existed, and it was in the North. And the fact is, we don't talk about it. That's why I wanted to write the book. And I wanted to write it specifically because it's in New York. People have this thing about New York City schools that I said, no, there was issues in New York City. New York City was a very segregated system, because where you went to school was, where you lived is where you went to school. And because of racial boundaries, that's the school you went to. And as a result, that's why in certain areas, if you didn't live in that area school, you didn't go to that school. Mm-hmm. All right. So, and still that's very similar now. It's still very similar now. And it's not just economics anymore. It's also based upon discriminatory practices. And my thing is, why do you have to move out of a certain neighborhood, live in a certain neighborhood to be able to, be eligible for the specific school? I'm thinking, make all the schools quality schools. And there won't be no problems, okay? Make all the schools quality schools. That's what you have to do. It's that simple. But people have a perception that people who may look like me or people who may speak a different language don't deserve a quality school. That's the perception. And I'm saying to people, nah, this is America. You want America to be great? It needs to have qualified people of all ethnic groups available to pursue excellence in this country. Then we'll have a problem. Then we won't have a problem. Because then people all have the same preparation and you do certain things. There's still gonna be some discrimination, of course, probably. But at the same time, you can't say they didn't have the ability to get the information they need to pursue certain things. Okay? Right. And like I said before, I'm a sports person, I'm a Motown kid, I love to dance, I keep it real. Like with my students, I keep up the cliche, all that. You have to provide information so people could understand. We do a bad job of figuring we got to speak a certain way. Like even with my clients and my counseling, I keep it real with my clients. I keep it relevant. You got to keep it relevant. I work well with children and I'm a long way from being a child. So I'm just telling you, you have to keep it relevant, all right? And that's the other thing with age. People feel you a certain age, you have a certain, no. Look, I can get a dance floor now and probably outbeat some of the kids on the dance floor, okay? So I'm just saying, I keep it real, okay? Matter of fact, I even used to do the moonwalking class a couple of years ago, right? So, oh, Dr. Cat, I said, yeah, watch out. So these are the things you have to keep relevant because that gives them the attention to pay attention. Okay? Who wants to go to class with somebody who's just, I wouldn't sit in the class that long, okay? So I thought you have to provide something that's going to keep people motivated. At the same time, let them get exposure to expose themselves to what's outside of the classroom. And now there's no excuse. You got computers. You can travel around the whole world just by going online.
Yeah.
Okay, go online. Okay. So I'm just saying to you as a whole, we have a lot of work to do economically. Okay, because you got to remember something. Black people don't have a lot of wealth to turn over to, the generational wealth gap is huge in this country.
Yeah.
Huge between ethnic groups, huge generational wealth. Okay, and a lot of that has to do nothing with people personally, but because of how discrimination took place in terms of obtaining wealth. And if you remember, my maternal grandfather was a farmer. He owned his own farm. He had owned his own land, and basically, all my uncles. My mother was 13 or 15 kids, so I had a lot of uncles and aunts. Okay, they worked the land. Okay? They worked the land. But do you know that Social Security did not provide anything to people who are agricultural workers? Ah, yes, you gotta have education is important.
Wow.
Agricultural workers were not eligible for Social Security until like, was it 40 something, maybe 50? Yeah. So think about all the farmers who had land, who had work. They weren't eligible for Social Security when they got these 65, 70 years old, if they lived that long. Okay? So you think about wealth inequality in this country. It starts back to the fact that, it's like the tortoise and it's like the starting line is at this point. And then for other people, the starting line's way back there. And who do you think is gonna win the race? Okay. So I'm saying to you, people don't know the history. You need to know. And then once you know, you should be able to take the information that you know and cultivate and how to enhance it, move forward. That's also education. So like I said, I sat with my mom and my cousin who was a realtor and who owned this business. And I had to read the New York Times every day in my elementary school from 4th grade to 6th grade. Part of the lesson was reading the New York Times, not and I'll tell you, the magazine, every section, New York Times. And I actually ordered it and we had to read the New York Times. That was exposure that I didn't have prior to that. Okay? But the same relative, he also was reading the New York Times and he didn't have a huge formal education. Okay. But now he owned several businesses. Okay? So you can get exposure and be able to cultivate that. And then you can pass on to the next generation. But if you don't have anything, you're already starting from afar. But you still can do something now. But what I see now is that there are people who don't have the exposure understanding of how that comes about. So instead of us going by buying our, luxury items, that's nice. But you know what? Once you buy it, what's left? Okay. All right. What's left? Okay. So that's apparently a mindset. And I have an issue with that too, Yeah, I like nice things, but my thing is like, where's that going to? Is that going to be something? It's like, am I going to be okay if I do this? What's this going to? How can I advance behind this? Is this going to be something I can buy, I can own, and it can provide income on a regular basis? No. Or if I can buy it and maybe 5, 10 years from now, I can sell it and make a huge profit from it. But this is how I grew up. I learned this around my cousin, and my mom, because matter of fact, my mom was the one who bought my first property for me. She said, give me some $1,000, which I had to her. She bought my first property, sight unseen. Okay, sight unseen. I didn't see the property for a year till a year later. Okay, so I'm just saying to you, it's doable, but you have to have people who understand that, all right, and go with that. And I'm just grateful. I'm grateful that I was able to be receptive to understand it. And I think a lot of it had to do with my exposure growing up in that desegregated school, because I was surrounded by a huge amount of wealth. Those students were wealthy. I mean, wealthy. Majority of those students were wealthy, and they weren't Black students. Okay. So I'm saying to you, that was exposure that gave me the insight of what I need to. I said, what is it I need to do? Why aren't my parents living in a place like this? Why don't they have a penthouse like this? And why, you think about, and there were some kids who were being picked up by limousines. Okay, so I'm saying to you, when you see that level of wealth, and then you go back to your community, I'm like, now we live in a nice place, but I'm thinking, So I was able to learn from that exposure. But if children don't get exposure, Well, so they don't know, just know what they see.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't care if you can talk and talk. But they all look, my dissertation was on role models and mentors. Okay. That was one of the topics I studied as my dissertation topic. One of my major role models was my cousin, who was a vice chancellor at a HBCU. Okay. And I looked at his life. You know, he had been an all-black principal, had been assistant principal at an all-black school back in the day. And he was now working at HBC. I mean, I was still a young teenager when he was doing it. That gave me a perspective, okay? And I said, so there's something's doable. Now, there's a difference between a role model and a mentor. Now, a mentor is somebody who takes you under their wing, literally, okay, and guides you. One thing as a female, I learned that we didn't have many female mentors, okay? Guys may have had mentors, but most females don't usually have mentors. And if they did, it might have been another female, but it was limited, okay? So I think that we need to have a development where we have mentors who mentor people in every aspect of society. Okay?
Yeah.
And if you do that, then we can all become more achievement oriented. We can all cultivate our economic wherewithal and can build on what else we want to become. If without that, it's going to limit our ability to do that. That's all I'm going to say. That's it. It'll limit us. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it will limit us. So that's pretty much my take about, pipeline to prison, the need for having mentors, because if we could fix the situation where and I'll tell you, it's tough for these young Black men to be able to have mentors, then they're less likely to have to go through that pipeline. But they're not, they don't necessarily exist. Okay. I mean, I know a famous civil rights person, and he said to me, he speaks to me more than he speaks to his own sons. Okay. And I'm just saying it all depends, because you can even have a parent who's very successful, but it all depends upon the relationship you have with the child or the person. I just happen to be a person. I like to talk. I like to speak to people. I like to know things. I was always inquisitive, but I didn't speak publicly until my senior in high school. Who would have thought, right?
Wow.
Senior in high school. I mean, I was always social. I had friends. We talk, but I didn't speak publicly for the first time until senior in high school. And that was my entree to public speaking.
Oh, wow. Well, they say that's the #1 fear among Americans. So if you got it out the way back then you doing pretty well.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, but the only reason I'm saying that is because it wasn't something that I was pursuing. I was okay not doing. The only reason I was speaking out because I was running for senior class vice president. I wanted to run for, that was my, I guess, political thing. I knew people, and I wanted to be involved in something in the school, other than cheerleading, because I was a cheerleading person. But I'm just saying that was something I wanted to do. And I said to people who knew me from high school, they knew me from high school, but they said, well, I spoke to the person who was running for president. I said, I don't want to be the president. I'll run for vice president. You run for vice president. Because I said, you're going to win. Don't worry, because I'm not going to run against you. I said, but I'm going to run for vice president. And the only reason I ran for vice president, and I would have won if I had gone against that person, probably because I was very popular in high school, is because I wanted to be a cheerleader. And I wasn't going to be a cheerleader. Couldn't go to practice if I was senior class president. So I said, okay, I'll be vice president. That way I have to be responsible for all these meetings. I don't miss my cheerleading practices. But that was because that was important to me. Okay. I learned very early on that you have to do what's comfortable for you in your heart. Okay. And for me, that was something. I had been a cheerleader since the time I was in 7th grade.
Oh.
7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and even in college, I was a cheerleader. Go figure. But that, you have to find a balance. For me, that was a balance between my economic, my educational stuff and my social stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. And like I said before, I'm a sports person. I love basketball. Coming out of New York City, New York City basketball, king of basketball was in New York City. But I also think that when I was a cheerleader, it was more of like a dance. It wasn't static. It was a dance. And I love to dance. So it fit right into something I was interested in. So I think that just that processing spoke volumes, and I was able to perceive that based upon my early education. You
Right.
need to stick with something that you feel that you're interested in and pursue it, despite, oh, you're not tall enough, or uh, you don't have long legs, or I didn't let that dissuade me. Okay, but because of my experience, having gone through that desegregation experience in elementary school, I said, if I can get through that, I can get through anything.
Mhm.
Okay, so
I
that I
like
took
that.
the things I learned with me, and I think that everything that you get involved in, you take what you can from those experiences, and you go on to the next level beyond that. For example, I'm very pleased about being a licensed professional counselor, and that experience has allowed me to be more perceptive about people's feelings and needs from a psychological perspective. Okay, and it's also been very supportive economically. Okay, so but if I didn't have this license, I couldn't do this. Right? Think about it. So I had to get the license before I could do it. And
Mhm.
then the fact that it's telemental health, I don't go to office anymore. Everything's online. So if I wasn't board certified telemental health provider, I couldn't do it online.
Yeah.
So I keep saying, prepare yourself, because you don't know what the next step is going to be. And it's just, you said very, very vividly, that just keep going forward. And along the line, somebody's going to come in there, interject, and provide the opportunity that you may need for that next step. And that really was what happened to me. I'm very, very pleased right now. And nothing's perfect, but still, like I said before, you can become a millionaire. Okay, there's no question about it. But you don't know how it's going to come if you're not prepared. You got to be prepared. You just got to be prepared. And right now, I'm still preparing myself. And age has nothing to do with it. At any age, okay, at any age, I may still look good, but I'm older. I'm just saying, I'm working this as long as I can. I'm gonna work this as long as I can. So I'm just saying, that's my attitude. And see, one thing I remember, where was it? I read someplace, your attitude determines your altitude.
Yeah. I believe that. That's right. So where can they find your book at?
The book is available on Amazon.com. And it's the title of the book, as you mentioned before, Desegregation of the New York City Schools, a story of the Silk Stocking Sisters. And like I said before, if they want to purchase it, please, please purchase the book, fine. If not, have your schools that you belong to, your affiliations, your fraternities, your sororities, your organizations you belong to, your book clubs, have them to purchase the book, have the city or state school, like the New York Public Library has a copy here in New York City. They have copies in several colleges within the state of Connecticut in which I work. So get a book, have them purchase the book. They have budgets for those books, have them purchase the book, and then that way more people can share the book. And it's also available as an ebook as well. So it's available as an ebook as well as a hard copy. There's no paperback, unfortunately, but definitely hard copy and ebooks are still available at Amazon.com. And my last name is Canada, first name is Theresa.
Okay. And your social media handle, what's your most popular one? Where can they find you?
LinkedIn is the only one that's really popular. That's why always people, like hundreds of people come, LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn. I'm more or less, because it's a professional site for me. I'm not really on Twitter or anything like now. I'm just basically on LinkedIn. I do a lot of professional stuff. So that's probably the best place for me to go. Or either if you want to contact me at did I have my email address? Did you have my email address? Do you have my email address? I'm trying to think. Did you have my email address? I think it's www.silkstockingsisters.com.
Silkstockingsisters@gmail.com, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and let you get back to it, your evening. I really appreciated you today, and you dropped a lot of jewels. And I hope that we can get. Well, I'm going to get this to you. I'll edit it and I'll get it over to you, and I'll give you a couple of tips on how to share it to your followers and fans.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
No problem at all. I'm gonna circle back around. We'll do another round. We may get into maybe some CRT or something like that next time.
Okay, sounds good to me. Sounds good to me. I'm ready. Whenever you are, I'm ready.
Okay, okay. I'll let you know. All right. You have a great evening.
Thank you so much. Bye now.
Bye now.